countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from the changing room of Emma Frost at the Hellfire Gala, it is now time for the last comic shop podcast!
Which Hellfire Gala? There were 3 of them. Third one didn't work out so well. That's the one where they basically kill everyone, and Professor X does all these machinations to save mutants by being a dick.
Well, what about the other 2 then, J.A.? Which one was, of the other two, which one was the better one?
Well, in the first one, Scarlet Witch bites the dust.
Ooh!
She shows up to the prom, and they're like, no, we remember that no mutants bullshit. Die.
Wow.
That's crazy. No, like it's almost like carrying pig's blood. That's nuts. I didn't know any of this. I don't know a lot about X-Men. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson, and I'm joined by my cousin, J.A. Scott, who knows a lot about X-Men for this week's show, as well as Chad Smith, who knows a fair amount, I guess, of X-Men.
Up until like 1994. I gotcha.
Wow. But if you're wondering why we're talking about the X-Men, it is because officially here on the Last Comic Shop, we are planting our flag. Yes, the Krakoan Age ended a couple months ago, and the trade paperback of Fall of X, Rise of the Powers of 10, or
I think it's Fall of X, Rise of X.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's Fall of 10. I mean, the whole 10 thing is referring to Moira 10.
Yes, that is true.
Is that the only 10? There aren't other 10s in play?
No. Who are they? 10 multiple?
Oh, no. Sinister has all the playing card things on his heads.
Yeah, that's only 4, though. There's only 4 suits.
But they all get 10s.
That's true.
There's queens and kings.
Okay.
Bo Derek does not show up.
But long story short, whatever they call this, that includes the 2 miniseries as the end of the Krakoan Age, as well as X-Men 35/700, whatever you want to say it is, was released in trade paperback last week. And so we are finally going to talk about the entire Krakoan Age. I mean, there's a lot to talk about there, and you can go back and listen to past episodes where we highlighted certain moments, like whether it was the House of X,
Hawks and Pox. Yeah.
House of X, Powers of 10.
We've also got past episodes with X of Swords or 10 of Swords or whatever it was called. We've got episodes about Inferno where Hickman left, and then everybody else picked up the ball from there. We've even got X-Men and Fantastic Four where they tried to get Franklin to join their little commune, and I don't even know if that Reed Richards thing ever played a part in anything, right? Like, was that just like something that just dropped off the table where, like...
No, he shows up at the Hellfire Gala and tells Professor X, like, he knows what Professor X did to him.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I think after that, it was kind of...
Nobody cared. Nobody cared.
It's one of those things that the long-running daytime soap opera that is X-Men... It's a plot twist that people forgot about and didn't get it passed on from showrunner to showrunner.
Well, one thing that certainly got passed on from showrunner to showrunner was the whole island of Krakoa and how it had such an infinite impact on all of the X books for like the last, 4 something years. And so I would like to take a step back, go into that time machine, and see if we can think of that time that the X-Men weren't on Krakoa, right? Do you guys remember what happened before Krakoa?
I mean, you had a lot of events. You had the House of M event, obviously, where Scarlet Witch got rid of all the mutants, and that was pretty foundational. You had the legacy virus that also killed off a lot of mutants. Marvel went through this house cleaning thing where they thought that they had too many mutants, too many characters, so they just slaughtered whole lot of this, decimated their ranks. I think the Krakoan Age was the answer to that, sort of the pullback or the pushback. We've gone too far in one direction. We've killed off or depowered too many people. I think it had to do with Scarlet Witch. She did a lot. I mean, there's a reason why somebody killed her at the Hellfire Gala.
Yeah, but you also had X-Men versus Avengers, and Charles Xavier getting killed by Cyclops, and Cyclops becoming like a big bad guy for a little while, and Uncanny Avengers, and then Axis, and then nobody cared about the mutants anymore because Marvel couldn't use them in the movies, and I don't know. I mean, Chad, you have always been on the peripheral of all comics, right? Like, you dabble in everything. Your pull list is enormous. Like, was the time before Krakoa good? Did we need Krakoa? Like, what's the deal?
Well, that's the X-Men had suffered as a line. I want to say going back to when Grant Morrison took over the book in 2000s, he had some radical changes, and it shook up the X universe. And I'll be honest, I've never read those stories, but from then, it seemed like it was in a constant state of nobody knew what the heck it was. You know, they were trying to get back to what they were, and then you had the No More Mutants thing, and then Bendis brought back the original X-Men and their younger versions. But in the interim, X-Men always seemed to be kind of adrift at sea. I remember being interested for a hot minute whenever Hope was initiated, and then once again, it went back, it went out. The announcement came for Hawks and Pox, and we're like, all right, this is going to be exciting. And it was something.
It was. And I think that's where I want to pivot to this question. For better or for worse, the Krakoan Age changed the trajectory of X-Men for many, many years. You ended up having to read every single GD X-Men book on the market, it seemed, just to understand what the heck was going on. And I wanted to kind of pose this question to both of you guys as comic book fans. Do you feel like these universe-shaping events, whether it was Civil War, whether it was the Second Secret Wars, even like minor ones, like the symbiote stuff, the absolute carnage stuff with Null and all that, and or War of the Realms, or any of this stuff that like changes the entire landscape of these titles, whether it's on Marvel or DC, because DC does it too. Do you think that's good for comics? Do you feel like it brings more people into the tent, or does it alienate more people? J.A.
All of these big sort of massive story arcs are different. They have different themes and different trajectories, and involve, some of them are just within maybe X-Men books, or some of them are galaxy spanning. So you're going to get Spider-Man, you're going to get Captain America, you can get the Avengers and stuff, or DC side, maybe it's just the Batman family. They'll have some sort of crossover event, or maybe it'll be a massive one and you get Wonder Woman and Superman and the Green Lanterns and Doom Patrol and whatever. When they cross over multiple different titles that you're not usually reading, it can bring people in and make them interested. But the flip side of that, the challenge is sometimes they'll be like, well, I don't care about such and such a character, and now I have to buy that book and read a whole issue with this character that I don't care about, or I'm not going to understand the story. So I think for it to be done well, you need to have a overarching, say, like a showrunner or a writer, but they can't write every issue. You can't have like Hickman come in and Hickman's going to write every issue of this giant, massive crossover event. Maybe he's the head scripting guy or the head, idea man for the crossover event. But whoever's on the Spider-Man book or whoever's on the New Mutants book, they should stay on there because they have, I think, a better idea of the voice of the character, and then put them within the larger context of the crossover event. So I guess in a long-winded answer, I would say the crossovers can be good because it's something that gets people talking. And, look at what the Krakoan Age did for the X-Men. It got a lot of people talking. It made the X books relevant again, which they hadn't been for quite a while.
Wow. But I wanted to kind of question you on that, because you were one of those people that originally jumped onto the Krakoan Age. You were buying every single book, and you were hell-bent on reading everything. And did that lead to fatigue? I think it did. I mean, from past conversations I've had with you, you were like, oh, Jesus, there's another book I got to read. I got to read this before I can read this, before I can read this. It just seemed like things were piling up on your plate.
Yeah, I also just decided to be a little bit more rational about it and figured out that I don't need to read everything because hindsight helps. Ultimately, not everything is as important. So you learn what events and sort of what storylines are the important ones, and then you can fill in the blanks a bit or go back and reread stuff if you need to. Figure out when did Moira McTaggart become an android, for example. Yeah, and if I could add my get off my lawn moment, the whole renumbering comic books after 2 years or after 1 year, suddenly it's another number one X-Men. I'm like, you just had a new number one X-Men. Oh, but this is the number one X-Men for 2023, not the number one X-Men for 2020.
Yeah, now they're on Mars.
It's just still X-Men, just legacy numbering. Why get rid of it?
I agree. Name the stories. You don't need to rename the book all the time.
It's true. All right, before we go to commercial break, I'm going to pivot back to Chad. Again, he's touched upon everything, and he's lived his fair share of these events. Chad, good or bad for comics overall?
The big status quo changes. I'll tell you what, Civil War was great. I remember the build-up to Civil War. That was probably like the last best time for comics for me in terms of like just wanting to get as many pieces of the puzzle as possible. I thought they were all woven in really well. Post Civil War, Marvel had a period where they were going event after event after event, and that soon lost its luster. And things like Dark Reign were fun, but it was its own thing unto itself. But yeah, normally with the big status quo changing events, they're not for me. I do buy a lot of books as it is. I have a pull list that would rival a lot of folks, and for me to add every X-Men book on top of that pull list, no, I have other stuff that I'm interested in. Like, I'm not going to drop my Daredevils and my Spider-Mans and things like that for all these different X books. And I go back to things like Annihilation. I sat out the entire Annihilation Guardians of the Galaxy thing, and then once it was done and I heard how great it was, I went back, I read it, I loved it. It was fantastic. Hickman's first go-rounds with Fantastic Four and into the Avengers, into Secret Wars, I sat those out for large chunks at a time. And I would go back and I'd read them later on when I knew, okay, what do I have to read? What can I leave out? I don't know. We'll get more into the Krakoan Age, I'm sure. But there's just something about it that, like Civil War, I understood. I could feel what was going on. I could feel the emotions. I don't know if the Krakoan Age had emotions. It had androids and AI and multiple lives and soap opera twists and turns. And was I entertained? Yes. But did I love it? Well, we'll talk about it.
All right. Well, we will talk about it right after these commercial breaks. We will be back with our review of this, the end of the Krakoan Age here at the Last Comic Shop. So stay tuned.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
Hello, friends. Do you like the 80s and Transformers? We are the Autopod Decepticast, and we started our podcast doing a minute-by-minute breakdown of the 1986 classic animated feature, Transformers the Movie. We've since moved on to an episode-by-episode review of the G1 series and just started Season 3. We have over 180 episodes, so if you're just discovering our show, there's plenty of gold to stuff into your ears, and it is very funny and fantastic. I'm not biased. We are on every podcast aggregator you could possibly stomach: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and our web presence is autopoddecepticast.com. We are at APodDcast on Twitter and all of the things. Autopod Decepticast, friends, for all your animated Transformer needs.
All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our Read Pile Review. Yes, boy, do I hate the X-Men. I just hate them. And it's because of stories like this. It's because of the Krakoan Age. I came into this book even though I have been trying desperately to keep up with the X-Men and what's been going on, and J.A. has been periodically getting us to check in on his X family. 3 or 4 issues in, I was like, I have no idea what the hell's going on here. No idea. So hopefully, as we talk about today's book, J.A., Chad maybe, they can fill me in on what I missed in regards to the Krakoan Age. But before we get to that, Chad, who was involved with this rise and fall and X-Men 700 and all this other stuff?
Okay, so lots of books here on this week's show. We are doing The Rise of the Powers of 10, written by Kieron Gillen, with art by Luciano Vecchio and R.B. Silva. David Curiel did the colors, and Clayton Cowles from BC had the letters. And then, alternatively, so you're supposed to read one after the other, we had The Fall of the House of X. That 5-issue series was written by Gerry Duggan, with art by Lucas Wernick, and he was accompanied by Jethro Morales for issues 3 and 4, and Stefano Caselli on issue 5. We had Brian Valenza on colors and Travis Lantham on letters for that one. And then finally, it all wraps up with Uncanny X-Men 700, a.k.a. Uncanny X-Men issue number 35. Well, we'll start off with the writers. We had Gerry Duggan, Al Ewing, and Kieron Gillen as writers. On art duties, we had Joshua Cassera, Phil Noto, Lucas Wernick, Lionel Francis Yu, Walt Simonson, Mark Brooks, John Romita Jr., and Scott Hanna, Jerome Pena, Luciano Vecchio, Stefano Caselli, and Sarah Pacelli. And as far as color artists, we had Romulo Farhado Jr., Phil Noto, David Curiel, Laura Martin, Sonia Oback, Marcio Menaiz, Matt Hollingsworth, and Matthew Wilson, with BC's Clayton Cowles on letters. There's a lot of names, so I apologize if I screwed any of those up. Oh, and I should mention, too, for X-Men 700, a.k.a. X-Men 75, Uncanny X-Men 35, you had Pepe Larraz and Marte Garcia on the wonderful 2-page cover with all those great X characters. That one was a blast.
Yeah. You also, I don't think it was included in the collection, the trade paperback that you can pick up. But there were some other bonus stories, one of which was written by Chris Claremont in that X-Men 700. So it has nothing to do with any of the Krakoan Age that we'll be talking about today. But for those fans of Chris Claremont, I don't think that one's going to...
That was great. That's such a great story.
Yeah, it is a great story, but it has nothing to do with the Krakoan Age. They're just having a picnic. In any case, J.A.
It's post-Krakoan Age, so it does have something to do with
it. Has nothing to do with anything. You know what's a picnic? J.A. giving us a 50-cent synopsis to set up the 10-cent synopsis of all this junk we had to read.
I mean, the 10-cent synopsis is, it's the end of the Krakoan Age. Moira McTaggart is completing her heel turn. Earth is under direct threat from Nimrod and AIs from the future. There is a human faction called Orcus that wanted to get rid of mutants and partnered with Nimrod, but Nimrod was using them as useful idiots. So it all comes down to X-Men versus AI Nimrod, and then there's this sort of out of time aspect, because also Mr. Sinister, one of his clones, has transcended to become this giant Dominion, which is like a big intelligent thing. I don't know. And
I'm so glad, because I just thought I was an idiot. Go ahead.
This kind of sums up why I hate this. You don't even know how to explain this.
And Professor X goes the whole time basically throwing everyone under the bus. He's playing the long game. He's playing three-dimensional chess where everybody else is not. So sacrificing, humanity and mutantdom to save both in the face of this horrible evil. Moira McTaggart has become like the worst of the worst. Well, I guess they need a bad person because all the normal bad mutants are now good mutants. Juggernaut, Magneto, all these people are fighting on the side of the Angels if they're not dead. Moira McTaggart kicked off the Krakoan Age when Hickman turned her into a mutant. Her mutant power was that when she dies, she's reborn again, and the universe resets to when she's born. And she knows everything that came after that, so she can start to change things. House of X, Powers of 10 is all about her first 9 lives, and then the Krakoan Age is her 10th life. And then it goes for a while, and then as we found out in Inferno, she has decided that mutants can't ever win. She's tired of losing, so we need to get rid of mutants. They need to become humans. She's essentially like the world's biggest coward. She just doesn't want to lose.
But she's an android in this.
Yes, I'll get to that. So that eventually she gets depowered in Inferno. So now when she dies, the universe won't reset.
Okay, but how's the android thing come in?
She really hates the mutants. If she didn't hate them, now she really hates them. Really hates Professor X. So she teams up with the AIs, and they back up her thoughts and synapses or whatever into a computer system, and then she's killed. Her body's killed. Her meat body's killed. And so she comes back as an android. And then it gets this story I need to read. At one point she goes to one of the Hellfire Galas. I think this might be Hellfire Gala 2. And she can't get in, of course, because she's not a mutant. She can't go through the gates. So she uses her past history with Banshee, woos him, kills him, and then wears him as a meat puppet. Wears his body as a meat puppet.
Ew! Why would I want to read this?
Yes. So she's gone off the deep end evil.
Oh, right. So Moira McTaggart is the big bad guy, even though
she's the big bad. Yeah. And so when this kicks off, they've just had the third Hellfire Gala where Orcus and Nimrod attacked and started killing mutants, and Professor X, he sent a bunch of mutants away and looked like he capitulated as a way to save people. Lots of X-Men were killed. Lots of mutants were stranded, and Phoenix was killed. Moira McTaggart killed Jean Grey.
And that's where we come up.
And that's where we come in. And then there's just the whole Mr. Sinister thing. I had a hard time with that when he cloned himself, obviously, a bunch of times. Oh, he's got this Moira McTaggart engine where he just clones lots of Moira McTaggarts to take advantage of her power so he can reset the universe wherever he wants.
Yes. And that led to panels in this book which are just these horrendous maps of this white hot room and this one Moira Taggart timeline. And I just, at that point, I almost threw the book against the wall. I was so frustrated with what was going on, especially in that Rise of the Powers of 10 book. I didn't know if it was in the future or the past or an alternate universe or whatever. I was completely lost. And so I texted Chad and I said, Chad, you're not an X-Men guy. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I didn't like it. No, I struggled. First couple issues, I was busy trying to make sense of it, and I realized that with the nature of this storytelling, I wasn't going to make sense of it. And then by issues 3 in each of the individual stories, I was bouncing back and forth. So I would start with a Fall of the House of X, and then go to the Rise of Powers of 10, issue 1, and then go back to House of X for issue 2, and so on. So by issue 3, I was caught up in the drama of the situation, knowing that there were large swaths of it that just didn't make sense to me, or I was too dumb to understand, or it was too dumb to be understood. I couldn't make heads or tails. But I was enjoying the soap opera aspects, and then big, weird, cosmic-y things would happen, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And I just keep going.
A lot. I mean, it's not obviously as well crafted as vintage Claremont, but there was often that you would get into an X-Men book and you have no idea what's going on because you hadn't read the first 200 issues before that. But you could still enjoy it if you look past the small stuff and just sort of see the big picture and the big swaths of art that they're trying to tell, versus trying to make sense of every single panel or every character's motivations, because a lot of them don't make any sense. Like, I just enjoyed, spoiler alert, that Jean Grey came back as the Phoenix, and now she can control the Phoenix power, and it's like a force for good, as opposed to killing planets.
No, I love that part. I mean, there was a turning point. I'm not going to lie. I think it was around issue 3 or 4 of Fall of the House of X, where they just started telling a story about the X-Men fighting Nimrod, right? Like, there was like a couple issues where it was just like basically all these X-Men used all their powers to, like, in some sort of combination with Storm and like Polaris and Magneto and the magnetism, just to like destroy Nimrod. And that I got. That was just like, oh, these are the X-Men fighting Sentinels. Like, I get this.
I mean, did you get it, or was it just...
I did. No, I got that.
Like, they have other powers to make electricity because of some other MacGuffin machination.
There's obviously a lot of complaints. The one thing I thought is that you always get the heavy hitters, it seems, but they struggled to get a lot of X-Men involved. I mean, Magic shows up and all she does is become the magic bus for everyone. And it's like, come on. She can do a lot more than just haul people around.
That's what Nightcrawler did too. He was just like the hauler around person. No, but they all played parts. And you got Cyclops playing his part of just being the guy. He seems like he's the weakest. Like, he has like the worst power. He just shoots things out of his eyes. But at the same time, like, he's just like, I got the one-liners, and everybody comes and bails out my ass at the end. I got a lot of powerful women around me that just end up saving my bacon, like Storm and Jean Grey. I never lose hope in them. Because Cyclops had his deal. By the end of the story, I don't know, 700 rolls around, and you've got, like, Magneto and Charles Xavier talking, and Magneto's finally full-on good guy, and he's like, yeah, I just want to hang out with mutants, it's cool, but I'm all right with humanity, it's fine. And he's like, oh, see, you can't even say that Charles was right all along, even though I'm full-on heel now. That was fine. Like, I got it at the end, but don't ask me anything about that Mr. Sinister plot. Like, in the White Hot Room, didn't understand any of that. That was all garbage.
That's where the dead mutants live until they don't.
Where the dead mutants live. So, yeah, and that was the end. The ultimate end of the Krakoan Age is that all the mutants that were killed on Genosha came back.
Yeah.
They essentially retcon, because it happened, but everyone who died for being a mutant was saved. And now they've gone to live in mutant paradise, and the ones who want to come to Earth can come to Earth. And Earth is now the same as it was pre-Krakoan Age, where mutants and humans have to live together. There's no mutant Krakoa. There's no mutant nation. And mutants maybe feel a little bit more empowered, but they're still looked down upon. And, you can draw parallels then to current day situations with people feeling left out of society or the other in society. And that's what we're getting back to. That's where mutants have always been the best. So the whole Krakoan Age thing was this nice little experiment, and then now it's been used to sort of reset the mutant universe.
Yeah. Real quickly, did they kind of make at the end, did they make Krakoa like mutant heaven, where like if people die, they just go to that Krakoan invisible place wherever it disappeared to? Like, it seemed like that because they can still resurrect people there or whatever, I guess, which I guess is... It's like
so it's like Valhalla?
Yeah, it's like the X-Men Valhalla. And I did like 700, where you got all the different artwork of just people beating up Apocalypse.
I hated that.
You hated that?
You know why I hated that? Because it was okay. And then there were like 3 pages of just the most breathtaking painted art you've ever seen. And then after those 2 or 3 pages, it went back to something else, and it wasn't as good.
I just like the fact that we got Walt Simonson drawing Apocalypse again. Chad must have loved that.
There you go. Yeah, I'm a sucker for Walt Simonson, John Romita Jr. You got the big Colossus slugging Sinister.
Yeah. No, it was good.
Jay, I'm curious, as our X-Men guy, at the end of the day, was the juice worth the squeeze?
I don't know. They had so many different ideas going on. I think the high point for the entire series probably was the kickoff, was the House of X Powers of 10.
Right.
Because it's such an original idea. But then it sort of dwindled. They were always trying to get back to that high point, and you have these kind of moments. You know, the first Hellfire Gala was good. Inferno was good. But they had painted themselves into a corner because they had to get rid of this whole where death doesn't matter because you can be resurrected. They had to figure out, well, now we've got this nation that can create wonder drugs and save the earth, but they're not doing it, so why aren't they doing it? And I thought it did get very, very bogged down on AI. Yeah, okay, it's the big topic of the moment, but it was just, for comic books, it felt very like a retread.
Right, but you brought it up earlier in the show that they took all the bad guys and made them good guys. So, like, who are they supposed to fight? I guess they'll fight humans. Guess they'll fight robots. I mean, who else are they supposed to fight, I guess? I will say at the end of the day, before we go to commercial break, that I think the biggest problem with Hawks and Pox and all of this is the fact that they had too many other X-Men books. Do we really need Hellions? I mean, it was good, probably. Do we need the one with, like, Kate running around freeing up the gates? Did we need this? Yeah, do we need these books? I feel like there was a story there, I think. And like a good show, like, you know, say Game of Thrones, which you maybe just followed, like, the main story that was going on, the more times that you had the spin-offs, it was like they had 6 other Game of Thrones spin-offs at the same time. And you were just like, oh, well, do I read the main story? Do I watch all these spin-offs? And I think anytime that is, it just gets very, very diluted and off target. And so, yeah, that's why I don't like those universe-changing events at all, because it's never self-contained. It's never just one book. It's always like we have 8 other books that we have to write and sell. And so we'll have spin-offs of that, but then it's like...
But the difference is, like, with the Secret Wars, the first Secret Wars, or the Civil War, you could pick and choose what books you were following and still get a satisfying story. And there were definitely moments, like, I liked Exterminators. I would pick up books for, a chunk at a time. But at the end of the day, I hate this. I hate it.
All right. Well, with that, let's get to commercial break because we've got ratings coming up right after these commercial breaks. Stay tuned because Chad has been waiting a long time for this rating.
Hey, it's Mikey Wood, frequent Last Comic Shop guest and collector. And as a collector, I'm always in need of boards, bags, long boxes, and more to house all those comics. That's why I use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off my orders at bcwsupplies.com. Not only does it get me a discount on BCW's already low prices, but I know using LCSPOD at checkout is another way I can show my support to the Last Comic Shop podcast and their continuing mission to bring fans together under that big comic book tent. So if you're in need of comic book supplies, head out to bcwsupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's LCSPOD.
Being a PI, you learn fast what seems like a normal case never is. You never realize how much you're going to need your friends. You can never guess how near your enemies are. And you never know who to trust. Now I'm chasing down an ancient artifact, the only thing that can stop this newly unearthed terror. It sounds crazy, but I'm not thinking how nuts it all is. All I can think about is the only man who's ever managed to grab my heart is right at the heart of this mystery. And why? Every time my heart gets involved in anything, there's always a monster waiting in the shadows to break it.
Ripped from the pages of the self-titled comic book comes Dash, a new queer supernatural noir podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Podcast Dash, on Instagram at dash.noir, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings. Yes, where you don't have to have a mutant X gene in order to come to our Krakoan party, even though it is ending. Yes, sadly for some, gladly for others. I don't give a shit one way or the other. The X-Men will continue going on out there. I will continue to read Fantastic Four and Avengers and those other books that I like. So, but JA has a 1 out of 4 scale for the ending of the Krakoan Age, and maybe we will tack on what we thought of the Krakoan Age overall in these final thoughts. So, Jay, what is our 1 out of 4 scale?
I would be remiss if the whole premise of the Krakoan Age was that they worked out that they could get these 5 individual mutants together, and one of them made gold balls. And from that, a mutant could be reborn. So 1 out of 4 golden balls.
There you go. Couldn't ask for a better 1 out of 4 scale. We are going to start off with Chad Smith. Now, before Chad starts, I am going to ask him to give me 2 different ratings now, because I want you to just rate just this collection of issues, like this trade or whatever. But I'm going to finally put you on point, and we will visit the archives in a second. But before we get to that, what did you just think of this collection of issues, Chad, first?
So, yeah, there were times when I was entertained. Like I said, about midway through, you get caught up in the drama. Once I set it down, and we had 2 or 3 days afterwards before recording the show, and I went to think about it, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. None of the stuff I read in here mattered. It was all MacGuffins, or it was all, I don't know, like, it wasn't the X-Men. Maybe the machinations of Charles Xavier, matched up with that character. And maybe there were times where Cyclops was trying to be cool, and that matched up with Cyclops. But the rest of it they were all, I don't know, pastiches. They were all just, they didn't matter. None of the characters mattered in the scenarios they were in. The storyline didn't matter. Nothing matters. It didn't make me feel anything for any of the characters. It was totally devoid of heart. Yeah, I hate it. So I gotta give this collection a 1.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back to the Last Comic Shop archives and listen to Chad several years back when we reviewed Hawks and Pox, and he gave us our grade for that show.
From the old show.
Yeah.
That part bothers me. The whole, being able to resurrect people, even though comics have been doing that for years.
Yeah.
In fact, they have a system now, that bothers me. There's a whole lot about this that bothers me. With that said, I'm also super intrigued. And I freaking hate Jonathan Hickman books, because I know when it's all said and done, I'm going to read it and be like, oh, that was a really great ride. But it's going to take 6 years to get there. And I'm going to have to wait, because I can't read these books month to month, because that'll just drive me crazy. Because I can't take all that time to go back and reread it and find out, what was that? Did he repeat those pages again? There were certain scenes that were repeated 6 times, and I'm like, did I read that over it? What? And I get confused. It's too much for my feeble human brain.
Big question I have for you. Was this enough to hook you that you will read more?
Now or later?
At any point, I guess is what my question is, because you just mentioned you're Jonathan Hickman, I might read it over the next 6 years. Is this enough to hook you?
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait at least a year until there's a firm setting, and there's 6 or 7 different X-Men books right now. Like, it's really hard to tell where those stories are going and, like, who's going to matter and all that stuff. And so I will wait and then find out through word of mouth, like, which books matter or are important to the overall story, which books can I jettison. And then I will probably pick those up just based on Hickman's past track record. Once I know what the important stuff is, I can deal with that. But until everything has settled, I'm not going to be the type of person that's keeping up with all the Rando X books each month, because there's too many characters and none of them matter. Like, it's the characterization seem off. The whole thing seems like it has like a glaze over it. There's like a Hickman glaze that, like, right now I'm still uneasy with it.
All right.
And it was the same with Avengers, the same with Fantastic Four until the Future Foundation came in.
Right.
You know, like, I'm still in the middle of that glaze where I'm very suspicious. I don't trust you with your charts, Mr. Hickman. But
all right.
I am intrigued. If I hear good word of mouth down the line, I'll definitely pick it.
Grade.
I'm gonna say, we'll say B+. Okay. Because I'd like to read it. I am interested, but there's enough that, like, agitated me that it's like, I don't like Mutant Sex Island. That's weird and unnerving. And, like, you have Cyclops and Wolverine and Jean Grey and everyone's like, like, no, that's weird.
They're all passing out beers to each other, and there's like the.
So there you go. That's what Chad said. Now, Chad, we have now, many years later, finally got to the end of the Krakoan Age, and I am taking you to task. You have to now come up with your grade or your rating for the entire Krakoan experiment. What do you say? Are you ready for it?
Oh, absolutely. So this started as another one of those Jonathan Hickman stories. And Jonathan Hickman isn't always the best in my mind at character work. Sometimes his characters can be flat and they just sound like story vehicles to get across what he wants to do. Now, in this particular story, like, from the jump, from Hawks and Pox, it was a huge swing, an entertaining swing at that. But boy, did I think, this breaks a lot of characters that I care about. At the time, I was like, well, let's see where it goes. If it's a good story in the end, then it'll be worth it. But the problem was they ditched Hickman and all his complicated machinations. And so even, instead of getting the good that I would get out of a Hickman story, where eventually all these intricately woven threads come together in a way that's super impressive and the story means something in the bigger picture of things, all I got was a broken bunch of X-Men. I don't think they stuck the landing. I don't think any of it really, I don't know. It was just, it didn't fit. And I blame Hickman for this because they didn't see it through. And so I'm going to go retroactively back to Hawks and Pox and take away the 4 or whatever it was. And that's a 1-2 because they broke the friggin' X-Men. They broke all the X-Men. They broke the whole universe of X-Men. And for what? For this? For this? This whole thing, it reminds me of the Christopher Nolan masterpiece Inception, right? Where you have a story inside a story mixed into a spinning top. And really what it was a bunch of pseudo-intellectualism, which is a big pile of heaping shite. If you made sense of Inception, you're the only one, because it didn't make sense. And was it worth the time? No, it was not. And it drives me crazy when people go, Christopher Nolan's such a great director. No! It's crap! It's crap! And that's what this is. It's also crap! Crap! It wasted so much time and so many books and so many wonderful characters and so much of the Marvel history that has been going since the 1960s. And it's just crap! Sorry. That's how I feel.
All right. You heard it here, folks. The official grade for the entire Krakoan Age, a 1.
It had its moments, but overall, well, I guess I'll hear in your ratings. Do you think this was a success?
Yeah, I think I'll go next. I mean, from somebody that was around for the entire thing, first and foremost, this particular collection, I wanted to throw it at a wall halfway through. And I'm sort of glad I didn't. I don't know. By issue 3-4 of this series, it started picking up, and it was a kind of a page turner, and I enjoyed certain parts of it. I'll probably say it's a 1.75. I'll go a little bit closer to an average book. But boy, it was like pulling teeth to read those first couple of issues, especially all that Sinister stuff, and I didn't know where the hell I was. And like Xavier was hanging out with Cypher, but it turns out it wasn't Cypher, and then the Mother Righteous. I don't know who the hell these people are, and why should I care? Why should I care about any of this? To piggyback on what Chad said, the Krakoan Age, the entire experiment, again, I think it started off really, really well. That first year of Krakoa, I genuinely was keeping tabs on what was going on with the X-Men. I wanted to hear what was going to be the next turn. Where were they going to go with these ideas? But I feel like eventually it got bogged down. It was kind of like the Ultimate Universe, right? Where it was supposed to be a reset for all of the X-Men, a brand new direction. And eventually it got bogged down in its own continuity. And like anything else, once you get bogged down, it's hard to get yourself unstuck. And this wasn't getting it unstuck. This was just like, we got to stop this. We got to stop this right now and get back to regular X-Men books that people are going to understand. And hopefully they do. So I'll give the entire Krakoan thing a 2. I'm going to go a little bit higher than Chad. I'll go say it's going to be a 2 because that first year was pretty good. It's just that, like anything, it just collapsed under its own weight. J.A.
Yeah, I think I agree with Chad. I don't think they quite stuck the landing on this. The characters, with the exception of maybe Moira McTaggart, AI bot, and weird Professor X, they were sort of just in their costumes and you know who they are. But my complaint that Magic didn't get to do anything except be the bus. Most of them didn't really do anything. They were there because they're the X-Men, and Storm shows up and throws some lightning, and Cyclops uses his eye bolt, but there was no character development for any of those people. Jean Grey comes back from the dead and goes into Phoenix mode and kills Nimrod, but it was as if, as you said, they just wanted to get it over with. Let's just get this all done. Let's bring back as many X-Men. And it didn't have the power. It just, I don't know. Maybe they were just tired of it, I guess. They didn't stick the landing. I'm going to give that 1.75. That being said, for the whole Krakoan Age, I don't know what you guys are smoking. I don't know what you're talking about. It was awesome. X-Men books finally mattered again for a while. And
Which
so
one?
for the whole Krakoan Age, I'm giving the entire Krakoan Age, albeit they really snaffled the landing, a 3.
A 3? Good
Yes.
gravy. Well,
You know
you're the
why?
X-Men
Because
guy.
Hawks and Pox was great. The X of Swords was good. The first Hellfire Gala was good just because we got to see the White Queen in an evening gown. And Inferno was good as well because Mystique finally got to Mystique.
Yeah.
And not doing Ninja Mystique, the Jennifer Lawrence X-Men movies. It's such an abomination of that character.
Okay. Well, you're the X-Men fan, so who are we to argue with you, J.A.? One thing that I hope you're not going to argue with is our recommendations, because guess what? We're still going to give them. Not like you could just yell at us and tell us to stop doing this, which is giving you other comic books in addition to Rise and the Fall and the X-Men 700, whatever. It's in a trade. It's already out at your comic book shop. You can pick it up. You don't have to even pick up all the issues. You just pick up the trade and read it if you want to.
And while you're there, I'm going to recommend some other things you can read of the Krakoan Age, Chad. The greatest hits, if you will.
Okay, let's hear them.
Yeah,
So-
I'm interested.
Get the House of X Powers of 10 trade paperback or hardback. Get the Hickman X-Men Omnibus. And get the Inferno. If you're just going to get 3, I would say that covers pretty much the best highlights of the Hickman X-Men before he got canned off the book.
Okay.
And then from there, if you want, you can get first Hellfire Gala. That's all right. You can just jump to the end.
Okay. There you go. You heard it here, folks. That's what you should read. Forget about X of Swords or whatever.
Well,
Even
no,
though
X of Swords is great because that actually gets some character development, but it's essentially it's a giant fight. It's like X-Men's version of Secret Wars.
Okay.
Secret Wars for mutants.
22 issues of a fight.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's so good. So
serious?
good. And then Magic grabs a sword and puts it down. She's like, "Let's go!" Yeah.
Oh.
And then at the end, Jean Grey says, "To me, my X-Men," and all the X-Men come down to fight, and that's so cool. And then,
All right.
I have a serious question. Do you think that the Krakoan Age would have been more palatable if they would have gone manga style and just done digests instead of making a shell out $4 an issue for whatever the heck's going on?
I do think that they had some really good stories. Like some of those Marauder stories are good. Those Hellion stories, the X-Force stories. But I think they were trying to do too much at once. If you spread those stories out over the entire Krakoan Age, and then when Hickman leaves, you still have some good story happening, I guess. I really feel like just at the end, they didn't know. They painted themselves into this horrible AI corner thing. Robots versus mutants versus humans, and they didn't know what to do. And, as I said, they got rid of all the normal villains, so they had to make Moira McTaggart into, like, the worst of them all.
Well, one thing that's not the worst of them all is Chad's recommendation, right, Chad?
Oh, no, it's the worst of them all. I was going to recommend nothing. Nothing. Just take a break. Go out and see some sun. Go for a walk.
That's hard to beat. I'm not going to give a recommendation this week because I agree you should check out all of these books that JA is recommending. Like, there's a couple I need to read, like the Hickman, or the original Hickman X-Men Omnibus. I need to read that, I guess. I mean, I like Hickman. I do. I genuinely like his writing. It's just...
Yeah, send the X-Men to the moon. Have them hate people. That's what it's all about. That's the Xavier's dream. We've been reading about for 30 years, 40 years, however many years. This is what it all adds up to. Great. Well, good job.
Well, our dream is that you come back to the Last Comic Shop next week. That's right. We've got brand new episodes all the rest of the year. And some of them might involve the X-Men. Who knows? If it's JA's choice, there's like a 50-50 chance he'll make us read an X-Men book. But you can check out all of our past episodes. They're evergreen, and they're available out at our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can rate, review, and subscribe to all of those wonderful podcasting outlets where you can find our show every single week, as well as YouTube. Got all those awesome videos out there, those covers, some of which are X-Men books you can watch. They're great. They're great if you got just a minute. Good stuff. All available at our website.
And you can also find us on the socials. We are at Last Comic Shop Podcast on the X's and the Blue Skies. And we're talking about all the other comic books you can read out there if you're not reading the X universe, because it doesn't matter. And if you did, you could just go back into one of the regeneration gold balls and come out and start again and try with something else that wouldn't matter, and that'd be much better for you. But anyway, there are recommendations, and they were from JA, and he said you should read Hawks and Pox and Hickman's X-Men Omnibus and the Inferno Omni before you come to the end, where you can read the books that we talked about today, which included The Rise of the The Rise of the Fall of the Powers of the House of 10X. G35700. No, The Rise of the Powers of X and the Fall of the House of X and X-Men 35/700. And it's all tied in there at the end of the Krakoan Age. Thank goodness. Yeah. Jay, you got anything? I got nothing.
No, nobody mentioned that Krakoa actually turned out to be a giant Ent and was running around.
Yeah, he was just a Groot.
He was moving a lot faster than Treebeard.
Did he fall in love with other Groots?
Yeah, well, they did something. I don't know what trees do. And that they was in the privacy of their own island.
Their photosynthesis involved.
Don't tree shame them. Any case. But we got merch, right, JA? What kind of X-Men merch can you get on at Last Comic Shop? I found out the other day that you can buy ball caps at our merch store now. Ball caps, both dad hats and trucker hats and all kinds of great stuff. All with the logos, right?
What's a dad hat?
Just the normal one. It's not like a fedora.
Do they have gold ball caps where you could just regenerate because nothing you do matters and these stories are worthless?
No, but they do have tote bags.
Oh, okay. Tote bags.
So you can carry around all of the Krakoan Age. Might need more than one.
No. I don't need no goddamn bag for this one.
Maybe a trash bag. Ooh! Snap!
To the moon.
Okay. I was the host of Most Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith and J.A. Scott, and we hope that you stay safe. Stay mutiny. Mutiny? Oh, man, that's like a different word. It's like mutiny. And remember that J.A. was the only one, three of us, that liked this whole thing. I'm sure there were other people. Maybe J.A. will find
Maybe they found the value that I didn't.
Don't listen to Chad. He's just a curmudgeon.
Right.
I hope you find your people someday, J.A. They're just not here.
They're on the moon. They're in the white hot room.
Mars. They're in Mars.
No, they're in Krakoa spelled backwards because that makes a whole bunch of sense.
The Last Comic Shop podcast was a 2024 Black Angus production.